It's opening weekend for the 44th season on the Eberspeche World Cup. We're in Innsbruck, Austria, the traditional opening week start. Yesterday we had men's and doubles competitions, and today we open things up with the women's singles event. The air at minus 3.2, that's 25 degrees Fahrenheit. It's expected to warm up to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit today, about plus 3 Celsius. There's a good look at the ice on this track, a track record set by Julia Tobitz back in November of 2018 at the World Cup opener there, and a start record by the recently retired Tatjana Höfner, the three-time Olympic medalist, set that mark at the 2017 World Championships held right here on this beautiful track outside of Innsbruck, Austria. Here's a look at the track, and a challenging start for the women in the doubles on this lower start as they make that quick left-hand turn. Now yesterday here out of curve 7, there were a lot of issues entering the Kreisel corner. And if you make a mistake before that Kreisel, you will certainly slow down on the long 270-degree turn. Then it's curve 8. Corner 9 awaits, a very challenging exit. If you come through there, it's a straightaway. You ride high up of curve number 10 and exit into the lower S's, the lower labyrinth. A couple of crashes yesterday in the men's race down at this spot, nothing major, but it cost them some time. And here is the big uphill finish to the finish house at Eagles. 28 are in today's race. The first 18 of them had to qualify on Friday to make it into the major field. 10 were seeded athletes. 2 to keep an eye on from qualifying. 2 returning German sliding moms, Diana Eitberger and Natalie Geisenberger. Natalie, perhaps the greatest champion in the history of this sport, will start number 18. Diana at 16. They are the defending Olympic gold and silver medalists, and we'll count them down to Tatiana Ivanova, the final to go. Julia Tobitz at start number 25 is the defending World Cup overall champion. Happy holidays a little early here in Innsbruck as we're set for our first competitor in this women's singles competition, Mihaela Manolescu from Romania. This year, the Romanian squad has brought a bunch of young athletes to the World Cup, at least for this opening race. We'll see if they take part in all of the competitions. Romania has competed at every Winter Olympics in luge since 1980, but they've yet to win a medal in the sport, although they had very respectable results, even in 2018 with a 7th place finish. 1992 Olympics in Albertville, Le Plan, Romania had a 4th place in doubles. World Cup Luge, 2 runs, combined time competition, cloudy, foggy day right now, although it is expected to clear up over the next couple of hours. 40.883, the finish time for our first luger of the day. Sit back, pour yourself a cup of coffee. I just poured my 2nd cup of coffee. 2 a.m. here in the eastern USA, where we're remote broadcasting from, and 9 a.m., actually 3 a.m. here, and 9 a.m. in Innsbruck. If you are up early watching, thanks for tuning in. You can find us on Twitter at Luge Announcer, or you can email us luge.announcer@gmail.com. Your questions, your comments, your insights. Looking forward to hearing from our viewers from 76 different nations yesterday for the opening day. Now Cesara Curme, just 20 years old, a student from Vatra Dome, Romania. She's appeared sparingly on the World Cup. 1 race last year, 2 races on the World Cup back in the 2016-2017 season when she was just 16 years old. Approaching curve number 9 here, or that was 10 rather, as she's already at the finish. 41.054. I got a little lost there. 0.17 in back of Manolescu, but safely down to Sarah Kerme of Romania. That's a view from the Kreisel. Good lines at that point. Low aerodynamic profile on that sled, although the feet are coming up a little bit there. I'm very non-critical of an athlete's performance. It's just not my specialty in this solo announcing setup from the remote location. However, we are hoping to have some athletes join us starting next weekend, and we will be able to have a more lively discussion. The Koreans have qualified both a doubles and a women's sled into the World Cup full field races. Park and Cho took part yesterday in doubles. This is Haesun Young, 25-year-old student who finished 35th in the overall World Cup 2 seasons ago. No man qualified. As you see, Young there having a lot of trouble just on the start ramp, the opening curve. She gets it together on the entrance to the Kreisel, but at what cost? I got to believe she's going to be way back at this point. We'll get a speed comparison in about 20 seconds. The top speed so far is a 66.3. She'll be a mile an hour or so slower than that. $65.4 as she makes her way to the finish line in a time of 41.372. The Korean is down. We will see Team Korea a little later on today in the relay competition. Big, busy day for World Cup Luge. For just the second time in the history of this sport, there will be 3 World Cup races happening in one day, as you see the issues that Jong had at the start. Following the women's competition, 2 runs for the women, of course. There will be the relay event. And then after the relay event, we've got the sprint. Men, women, and doubles for the sprint. No spectators due to the COVID restrictions, but the coaches and other support are allowed at the start and the finish, but only as many as 2. So not a big group of coaching staff this year, at least for now. Veronica Ravenna on course now. The Canadians are not here for the first half of the season, but that's okay for Veronica. A dual citizen from Canada and Argentina, and she has represented her South American nation in the sport of luge, most notably at the 2018 Olympics. And Veronica told me her goal this year is to try to qualify into the main field for as many World Cups as possible. Check, she did it for race number 1. So a great showing by Ravenna, who's 12 hundredths behind Manolescu at that split. 66.4 miles per hour, the fastest speed, but not enough track to take over and move into the green. Second place right now for Veronica Ravenna of Argentina. She was the youngest member of the Argentina delegation at the 2018 Olympics and the only athlete to compete in any ice sport. Now Katarina Simanikova will represent Slovakia, getting ready at the start. The 22-year-old, like her brother Jakub, Katarina is a student working on her studies while she works on her international sliding career. 14th place finisher at the Youth Olympic Games and 23rd at the Major Olympics 2018. Last year, Katarina was in 22nd place in the World Cup overall. Her best result was in the boycotted race in Winterberg. Not every nation took part. And as a result, Katarina put in a 15th place showing. Still in the green. As she maintains a pretty good advantage by 1,400, speed of 66.4. That ties for the best with the Canadian Ravenna, or the Argentinian rather, and 0.2 of a second ahead of the rest of the field. There's Jakob, who raced yesterday and will join Katarina, presumably, a little later on today for the relay event. Quick shout out to Chris, who emails in. Chris is watching from Wales, again, one of 76 nations receiving our signal this weekend, saying it's great to have Luge back. So thanks for emailing in, as did Elsa from Ireland, mentioning that earlier yesterday that Ireland, the Irish Federation, the Irish Republic, we should actually say officially, the newest nation in the sport of luge, as they were accepted into the International Luge Federation at the Congress last weekend, and we will see Elsa and the Irish team a little later on this season. Now Raluca Stramaturaro, 7th place finisher at the last Olympics. Last year, Raluca was the highest placing Olympian in the Women's World Cup. 1 through 6 had all either retired or taken the year off. Now the two Germans are back. Raluca is hoping for a bit of a comeback season this year, but she had a little bit of a struggle last year, ending up back in 16th place with only a couple of top 10 finishes. Raluca told me earlier this week that training was certainly a challenge this year because of the COVID pandemic, but it also allowed her to spend a little more time with her family, which was nice. 2nd place right now for Stramaturaro, a 40.849. Great to see 3 Romanian women in the full World Cup field qualifying for the race this weekend. Raluca is one of the representatives, the athlete representatives to the International Luge Federation. We're just 6 sleds into this opening World Cup race, women's singles competition in the Tyrolean Alps of Innsbruck, Eagles, Austria. 20-year-old Olena Shmaha from Kiev, a 10th place finisher at the 2016 Youth Olympic Games, which were held in Lillehammer, Norway. Olena having a lot of trouble on that ramp. This is not a very recent development, but in the early years of covering World Cup racing in Eagles, the real problem was curve 9. The problem was curve 9 right there, and maybe sometimes out of Kreisel, sometimes here in the lower S's. But now it's that start ramp for women's and doubles that gives the most challenge to these athletes, seemingly. It's going to be really interesting later today when the men also have to start from that lower ramp for the relay event, because they don't really get much of a chance to train down there, perhaps one time. So there'll be a lot of surprises as Shmaha is back in 6th place out of 7 as a result of these early troubles. Early going here, we have our first Austrian getting ready to go. Be interested to hear from any of the lugers if you are tuning in, to let me know via Twitter at Luge Announcer if you're having visibility problems on the track as you make your way down. Well, a debut. Welcome to the World Cup, Barbara Almayer, just 17 years old. She will turn 18, or she's 16. She'll turn 17 next week. How about that? A 16-year-old on course here. She qualified from the Nations Cup, finished 10th last year in the Junior World Cup race in Winterberg, and also 8th at the Youth Olympics on the natural track in St. Moritz, Celerina, Switzerland. Her home track, of course, comfortable here. I expect we will not see Barbara at a lot of races this year, but it's terrific, this opportunity for the 16-year-old to race her first World Cup as she comes through just out of the lead, 40.770. And Rennie Friedel seems satisfied by his youngest athlete's performance. Barbara Almayer, 16-year-old in second place, 0.08 behind. A quick comment coming in from our good friend Ken, up early in Durham, North Carolina. Ken says he's assuming that since I'm having to do commentary for 3 races, I probably won't be taking the 30-minute power naps in between heats. Ooh, Ken, that would be a dangerous thing for me to even try and do. Easier to fight it than to take the power nap. Now, Nina Zugler of Italy, a 19-year-old from Milano in Südtirol. Nina made the World Championship team last year for Italy, although she still remains a part-time luger on the World Cup as she balances school and her luging career. We'll see if Zugler will be on full-time this season, with all of the races being held in Europe this year. The last non-European race, the test event in Beijing, was canceled earlier this week. Earlier this season, Pyeongchang, Whistler, and Lake Placid were all canceled and moved to Europe. Nina working into the green with good speed, 66.8. That's the fastest so far in the race. Here she crosses the finish line with a time of 40.475. That man there is not only her head coach, it is her father, the great Armin Zugler, winner of 57 World Cup races in his storied career. Nina's cousin, Sandra Robacher, by the way, one of the more experienced Italian women, injured herself again for the second year in a row during preseason training, and Sandra will miss the entire year. That is unfortunate. Nina Zugler leading the way over Simonakova and Almayer, and on we go. Our 10th competitor to grab the handle, still early in this busy day of luge. This is Sigita Berzina of Latvia. Yesterday we saw a great performance by a young Latvian doubles team in their first ever World Cup. Bats and Pluma were in 5th place after the first run. And now we'll see what Berzina does. Last year she was in 4th in the overall World Cup junior standings, and also had an 8th place finish at the World Championships. That was the Junior Worlds. But Latvia very strong in women's luge. Later on we'll see Taruma, and we'll see Kendia and Eva. 40.732, and I meant Ula, not Eva. But a good showing there in her first World Cup race. Sigita Berzina, the 20-year-old from Latvia. A lot of very young, inexperienced athletes to start this race. They all qualified on Friday. On the FIL World Cup, there is a Nations Cup race, one heat held every weekend on Friday, and that qualifies all of the athletes into the main draw. And not everyone makes it. It's a very stressful day. Some lugers will tell you that's the hardest single run of the week at any given World Cup, is that qualifying run at the Nations Cup. Keeping a safe distance from one another and from the athletes are the various coaches from the various nations. From Italy, Marianne Oberhofer. Marianne will turn 21 in 2 weeks. She's from Meranza in Südtirol. That's a suburb of the city of Brixen. If you know your South Tyrol region, it's one of the prettiest spots in the world. Nice form out of Kreisel, still in the green, just by 200s as she exits 8, now curve 9. Not too bad. She goes from green to red, everything looking pretty clean, but losing some speed along the way. 66.6 miles per hour is the conversion from the kilometers you see. And now to the finish, Oberhofer, a tenth of a second back in second place. It is Italy leading the way, first and second, as you see with Simonikova and Berzina, third and fourth. A little later on, we preview some of what's to come. Diana Eitberger, Natalie Geisenberger, both Olympic medalists. Yulia Tobits, the defending World Cup champion. Tatiana Ivanova, with 14 World Cup victories on her resume. They are all coming up in the second half of the draw. The Russians are getting ready. The coaches don't seem that interested, but they'll turn their attention to the top now for Ekaterina Baturina, 28-year-old athlete from Krasnoyarsk. It was a strange year last year for Baturina, who has been a fixture on this World Cup team for most of the last 8 years or so, but she raced in the first 4 events, and that was it. Then she did not race the rest of the year. It had to be very tough for her to not be part of the World Championship team for Russia, and even tougher for her to see another rather unheralded teammate, Katerina Katnikova, win the world title. But now Baturina's back, and Baturina is on course with 1/10 of a second behind Ziegler at this point. Two-time Olympian crosses within a 1/10, picking up a little time down at the bottom. I was questioning how the Russian sled setups were yesterday. Not that I am the foremost authority on matters technical when it comes to luge, but down at the bottom is when the Russians usually pick up some time, and they weren't yesterday. They were losing time. However, today, Baturina did move a little closer to Ziegler there in the last few curves. It will be interesting to see when Katnikova, Demchenko, and Ivanova make their way down with the seeded group. Marcus Prock with a little extra care and attention as he gets ready for the next competitor. It's his daughter, 20-year-old Hanna Prock. Hanna had her first podium finish 2 seasons ago in Koenigsee, where she had a 3rd place. She was also a member of Austria's 2018 Olympic team. That was a bit of a controversial pick, as she wasn't necessarily the fastest or the strongest on the squad leading up to the games. But it was a good Olympics for Austria, so I'm done with the second guessing there. By the way, she finished 17th in Pyeongchang. Hanna through the Kreisel, 18.742, 0.085 behind another second-generation luger, Nina Zugler. And now in the lower S's, to the finish curve, Hannah Brock, 40.476, as she makes her way into second place by just 1/1000th of a second. So the slightest of margins separating the two daughters of luge athletes who together have 20 World Cup overall titles. 10 overalls for Armin Zugler, 10 overalls for Marcus Prock. That is incredible. And now their two daughters are first and second in the standings at this World Cup opener. Of course, it's still very early.
Start ist 2, Verena Hofer, Italien, das ist die nächste.
Verena Hofer is 19 years old, representing Italy. She finished 6th last year at the World Championships in that race within a race, the under 23, as she takes the close line on that start curve, hugging that rail perhaps a little too closely, and now into the Kreisel. Verena was 15th in the full field race in women's singles at the World Championships. Hey, Craig tweets in, watching today. Thanks for waking up early to catch World Cup Luge, asking me what my favorite track in the world is. Not my favorite track, but my favorite place to visit. And I'll get to that in just a moment, Greg. Thanks for the question. As Verena Hofer, it's a very quick course here. Start to finish, 40.584. As Armin, certainly he knows how to negotiate this track, so he's already doing his coaching to his young athlete Hofer. As I said, she hugged that rail a little too closely. She stayed off, but she had to make a correction for sure. Well, my favorite place to visit, it's tough. There are a number of places I like. I'm going to be very diplomatic here. Certainly Innsbruck is great for the reasons that Jason Turdeman talked about yesterday when I was quoting him. It's a great city to visit, and just outside of the city are these beautiful mountains. But I love going to Calgary and Whistler. I love Königssee for its beauty. Cortina is about as gorgeous a place as there is in the world, and we're glad to see they're rebuilding that track. And then perhaps some of the areas that don't have the natural beauty as much have great local charm. How about that for a good political answer? Now, Lisa Schulte. In 2015, she started competing for the Austrian national team and moved her way up through the various youth categories. Last year at the World Championships, Schulte was in 16th. But you may recall last year at the World Cup opener, I believe she was in a podium position after the first run. She ended up dropping back to 5th or 6th overall, but still a great showing for her. It was a wild day for the women's race last year. We'll talk about that in a moment, weather-wise, as Schulte takes over the lead from Nina Zugler. Renny Friedel gives us not the thumbs up nor the thumbs down. He gives the thumbs sideways, which means perhaps there is room for improvement for Lisa Schulte in run number 2. 40.412 was her time. So again, she was in podium position last year after the first run. But last year it was a warm day and the track got soft in the second heat. And what happened was Tatiana Ivanova, who I recall was in 12th or 13th place after the first heat, she sat in that leader zone and watched the final 11 sleds come down behind her, including Schulte. Ivanova won the race. And it's a rare day that we've seen athletes come from so far back to capture a World Cup in a 2-heat race. Now Deanna Eitberger, welcome back to Deanna. from the World Cup, and congratulations to Diana and her partner Chris, who became parents in February. Their baby Levi was born. And Diana was telling me yesterday she misses both Chris and Levi quite a bit, so she wanted me to do a quick shout out to them and say hello. They are back in Munich watching the race. Eidberger finished third in the Nations Cup qualifying on Friday. Of course, she and Geisenberger, as great as they are, had to qualify because they took all of last season off with the maternity leave. Diana working with a good advantage here of 800ths now as she makes her way up to the finish. Her speed 67.6, the fastest, and she has a first place time of 40.3 or 333, yes. And Diana was also telling me her goals are very modest. If she gets some top 3 places in the first half of this season, she'll be okay with that. She said she has to be very patient as she makes her way back to the World Championships in Koenigsee. Great to see Diana back. Natalie Geisenberg waiting on deck. The Germans swept all 3 podium positions on Friday in the Nations Cup qualifying, with Geisenberg leading the way, but this woman, Cheyenne Rosenthal, in second. Cheyenne is 20 years old, began on the World Cup last season after winning a junior world championship the year before on this track. Rosenthal, the lone member of this year's national team from Germany who competes out of the Winterberg region. And we certainly hope we see the doubles team of Goyaka and Gam back here before too long. They're very proud of their athletes in the Hochsauerland. Rosie with the nice exit of curve number 9. Now high up on 10, she's looking good, but not carrying the speed that Eidberger had a moment ago. This should be second place or top 3 as she crosses the finish line, 40.462, third place. And it's Germany, Austria, Germany, Italy, Austria. That's the top 5 right now, as we've seen 17 of the 28 sleds make their way down. A reminder once again that the USA, Canada, and China are all missing out on the first half of this World Cup season due to dangerous travel, the restrictions. They just felt it was a safer, healthier decision to stay home. The United States in particular has several athletes that are medal contenders and have won medals here in Europe. And Emily Sweeney, a world championship medalist, Summer Britcher, 5 World Cup victories. We hope to see them back on tour in January. But welcome back, Natalie Geisenberger, the winningest luger in the history of this sport. 2 Olympic gold medals in women's singles, 49 World Cup victories, a whole shelf full of world championship trophies. And Natalie's husband Marcus and their new baby Leo, they are here in Eagles, not at the taking care of the baby, as Natalie is making it look pretty easy, but she had a bit of a skid right there in the lower S's as she exited 10. Let's see if she can stay in the green. She does by 700. So Natalie picking up where she left off 2 years ago, the 32-year-old from nearby Miesbach, Germany. Congratulations, of course, to Natalie and Marcus. Leo was born in May. And Natalie's father, Helmut, has also made the trip to Eagles to help take care of the baby while Marcus is working. And I'm sure, Marcus, you're watching a little luge right now as well.
geht jetzt weiter mit
Cheyenne Rosenthal in the background. She just came down in 4th place. Geisenberger's in the lead, and now the final Italian, Andrea Fetter, the 25-year-old, had a whole series of top 8 finishes over the last couple of years, including 3 4th-place finishes before finally breaking out onto the podium last year in Altenburg with the bronze medal, a 3rd-place result. So that was great to see. She's been improving steadily over the last 5 or 6 years. Curve 9 exit, clean. 67 miles an hour, and she is a 1/10 of a second back. Has some ground to make up on what is her home track here in Eagles, at least until Cortina is finished. As Andrea rather, is back in 4th place behind Natalie, Eitberger, and Schulte. The Italians also spent some time during the preseason training on the Olympic track in Cesana, so it's good to see that track is in at least partial operation. Andrea Fetta in 4th place. 9 sleds remaining now. And certainly one of the most emotional moments of all of last season was at the World Championships in Sochi. Katerina Katnikova, who had not podiumed in any race during the season, perhaps in any race during her career, took the gold medal on her home track. She took sprint gold. Then the next day she won the full field gold amidst a flurry of tears running down her face and cheers among the thousands of Russian luge fans who were watching that day. The defending world champion Katnikova, 26 years old, on course and already 1/100 of a second behind Natalie Geisenberger. She's the second to go here from the seeded group. Natalie Geisenberger was the last of the qualifiers here in run number 1. A lot of noise from that sled as she exits curve 9. How close can she keep it? The first race of every season is a big question mark for every athlete and every coach. Did all of the experimenting, all of the tinkering with the equipment, the training, did it pay off? Looks good for Katnikova. Right now, just 14 thousandths of a second behind the German Geisenberger, into second place, in between the 2 Germans right now. The second of the Russians on course with Demchenko and Ivanova still to come. Next week, the World Cup Tour moves to Altenburg, Germany, in the Saxony region. You talk about challenging curve 9s here in Eagles. That's another one. Curve 9 leading into the Kreisel in Altenburg. That will be fun to call, fun to watch. Maybe not as fun for the athletes. But still later today, run number 2 of women's singles, the team relay, and the newest discipline, actually the second newest discipline in luge now, the Sprint Cup, because the newest discipline is women's doubles, which will debut on the World Cup next season. Now, the next Latvian. 2 Latvians in a row getting ready to start. Candia Aprioda. Candia told me this week her main goal this season is to be more confident with herself and confident in her sled. She's 24 years old, from Sigulda. Last year, Candia was 8th in the World Cup overall with 2 top 5s, no podiums. In this race, she had a rough result, 27th place. She had a crash in the World Cup opener, so she's already doing better than that. But she is losing time from start to bottom here, and she's back in 9th place. So that's really the first time in the last 7 or 8 sleds we've seen someone not hover around the top 3 or 4 when they made their way to the finish. Not sure what happened with Kendia Apariod there, but we may get a better indication in just a moment as Ula Zerna is getting ready at the top. And we can see if Rubenis has these sleds prepared correctly for the still foggy conditions in Eagles. Moving along here, run number 1 at the World Cup opener, the 44th season on the Eberspecher World Cup. It is clothing designer and entrepreneur Ula Zerna. That's, of course, when she's not luging. Ula is designing clothes with her Ooh La La clothing line. Last year, Ula finished in the top 10 at the World Championships. She also had a 12th place result at the Olympic Games in Pyeongchang 2 years ago. Start time was about 200ths behind Natalie, and she has lost quite a bit more up of that in the top half of the track. Making her way to curve number 10, a big tall corner that dips down into these lower S's, the labyrinth. Ula Zerna of Latvia. One more Latvian still to come, 4 in today's race, but she is back as well, 40.579. Bit of a mystery to see these two experienced Latvians back in 9th and 11th place right now. We, of course, will be in Sigulda for a World Cup. That is a normal stop every year. The German tracks, Innsbruck, Sigulda, and certainly in most years, Lake Placid, all host World Cup races. Lake Placid will not be hosting this year. But at least the tour can get off the main continent for one race in the Baltic nation of Latvia. Natalie Geisenberger of Germany continues to lead. Run number 1 continues. And the final Austrian in today's race, Madeleine Egla, 22 years old. She is from the Innsbruck suburb of Rhyn, Austria. And Madeleine was telling me she dislocated her shoulder in August, and she was between undergoing surgery, trying to decide whether to do that or let it heal by itself, and she decided to let it heal on her own. And of course, that's a major blow to Madeleine, who traditionally has among the fastest starts in this sport, usually 1 or 2. But as you can see, if you were paying attention, she had only the 5th fastest start, but she has a great time working midway down this track, 67 miles per hour, long, lean body working to her advantage right now. Does she take over the lead? No, she just misses out by 5 thousandths of a second. So Madeleine Egla, the Olympic bronze medalist in the team competition, is currently in 2nd place, which makes you wonder, would she be in the lead if she had a healthy shoulder and one of the 2 or 3 fastest starts? It would have been interesting to see. It's Germany's Geisenberger leading the way over Madeleine Egla of Austria, and Russia's Ekaterina Katnikova currently in 3rd, with 5 still to come at this World Cup opener in Innsbruck. Thumbs up, 2 thumbs up from Madeline Egla. Marcus Prock looking extraordinarily nervous today. The sport director for Team Austria. Now the lone Swiss competitor in this sport of World Cup Luge over the past several seasons, Natalie Mogg, 23-year-old. Has been training with the German team in Oberhof all summer. Told me she feels ready for the World Cup. She loves the feeling of speed, especially around the curves. Natalie finished 11th in the World Cup overall last year. Her best result was a 6th at the race in Lake Placid. 0.2 of a second off the pace, really, and flirting with hoping to stay in the top 10 at this point. The Swiss miss up the outrun, 40.599, 15th place for Natalie Mogg in run number 1 here in Innsbruck. Natalie works as well as a saleswoman, and she's in the business sector in Switzerland. Of course, in these small nations, luge cannot be a full-time job. You have to find your income somewhere else. Four remaining, and next up the final German. Julia Tobitz had a big task to perform last year. When Geisenberger and Eitberger took the season off, could Julia keep Germany at the top of the World Cup points? She did. It was close, but in the final race, Julia Tobitz hung on. She won the World Cup overall. She did it by just 8 points over Ivanova of Russia, but Julia had 5 victories last year. And I asked her this week if she felt the pressure of having to defend the World Cup title, and she said, you know, she's happy. She can just luge. She'll enjoy the season. She'll see what happens. She's not feeling the pressure. She's happier, in fact, to have Natalie and Diana back with this now very strong German team. Tobitz is 24 years old, originally from the Saxony region, Annenberg, near the Altenburg track, but has been competing for many years now in Thuringia, in Oberhof. And she is looking strong. 800ths into the green. Can she overtake the Olympic champion, Natalie Geisenberger, down here at the bottom to the finish? Julia Tobitz does it by 800ths. Jan Eichhorn with the pumping of the fist for his student, Julia Tobitz. It's Germany 1-2 with 3 sleds remaining. Run number 1 still here in Innsbruck. There are 9 World Cups races to be held this year. All of them probably in Europe. 8 are scheduled. And just last week, Beijing canceled its Olympic test event, and we will await word for that, where that will be rescheduled. Königssee will host 2 races. Oberhof will host 2 races to make up for the other ones that were canceled earlier this year. All smiles and laughs for Tobitz down at the bottom. It's all fun and games when you sit in first place. Victoria Demchenko, 25 years old, from Dimitrov. Last year finished 3rd at the World Championships in Sochi. And the 3rd woman to go here in today's race, who happens to be the daughter of a multi-Olympic medalist. Victoria's father, Albert Demchenko, back this year coaching the Russian team after spending last season with the Federation in administration and athlete recruitment. Victoria looking very clean with her lines, but the speed is well off the pace 0.2 of a second back. 67 miles an hour. Victoria Demchenko to the finish in 11th place, 40.489. So far, Katnikova leading for the Russians. She's in 4th place. And not a great run here. I was not watching start to finish. And she wavered a bit, but all things considered, not bad on that start ramp. Demchenko 3rd at the World Championships last year, also 3rd in the World Cup overall. No victories last season, but 4 podiums. Final Latvian getting ready to go at the top with Julia Tobits of Germany leading the way. And Alica Teruma has been competing on the World Cup for 12 seasons now, but it wasn't until the end of last year, the race in Winterberg, that Alica captured her first ever race win, gold in Winterberg. She ended up 9th in the World Cup. She had 2 podiums. She also had a 3rd place in Sigulda. She got involved in the sport because of her sisters doing luge. In fact, Alica Teruma's sister Maya is also an Olympian. Struggling a little bit on that corner, the transition from 8 to 9. The Latvians are not enjoying a great day so far, as you usually have at least one Latvian in the top 5 at the end of the first run. 40.177 is Taubit's time. Here comes Alica Teruma in 7th place. So the fastest of the Latvians, 40.419. And she is still fairly distant out of the medals right now. She's in 8th or in 7th place, but about 1,500ths out of 3rd with 1 sled remaining. Be interesting to see how those Latvian sleds are looking in run number 2. Because Martins Rubenis, who works on those sleds, is really kind of a wizard in normal circumstances. All right, we wind our way down to the final competitor of run number 1, Tatiana Ivanova, the 2nd winningest active women's luger in the world right now. Distant 2nd, Natalie Geisenberger has 49 career victories. Tatiana Ivanova has 14. Last second visualization. At the end of last year, Ivanova finished 6th in the World Cup finale in Koenigsegg. Had she finished just 2 spots better in 4th place, she would have won the overall World Cup. It would have been the first time in forever that a nation other than Germany captured the Women's World Cup overall. In the end, Tatiana Ivanova ended up in 2nd by just 8 points behind Julia Tobits. And it is Tobits whom the Russian is trying to catch right now here in run number 1. Demchenko just put down a very less than stellar time. And Ivanova not looking much better here in the early going with the splits. Luging is all about driving ability, athleticism, and equipment. And right now it appears as if Russia is failing the test for equipment in run number 1. 10th place for Tatiana Ivanova. As a point of comparison, her lowest result all of last season was an 8th in Lake Placid. Every other performance was a top 6. In fact, all but one other was top 5. So to see Tatiana Ivanova in 10th place after the first run is very mystifying, and it should make for a very interesting second heat here in Innsbruck. a great look at her profile. It really looked good. The lines looked okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, if any of our luge experts are watching in live today. But sometimes the sled just does not do what you want it to do. And of course, what you want it to do is go fast. Results, first run, two great Germans, the defending World Cup and the multi-World Cup champion, Tobitz and Geisenberger, leading the way. By the way, Natalie has 7 World Cup overalls. Madeline Eigla, in search of a World Cup podium on her home track, is in 3rd. Katnikova, the world champion, is in 4th. Some surprises back in the pack, including Ivanova in 10th place and Demchenko and Aparyod in 13th and 14th place. No crashes, nothing even really remotely resembling a crash. That's good news for the track, good news for the athletes. All 28 will be on course for run number 2.